Thank you, Coley. Certainly precious to have the church family that supports, encourages, and strengthens. Thank you so much for that. In some areas, Sherry and I could not be any more opposite. It seems as we have come to know each other, we are on opposite ends of so many things. So she likes to end supper with something with the salt. I like to end it with sweet. Sherry, as you know, is an extrovert. She gains energy from being with people. I'm the introvert. I like to sometimes get in my own shell. Room temperature, oh boy. There's about a 15-degree differential between where I feel it's comfortable and she feels it's comfortable. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge there. And she is a night person, and I am a morning person. And so we have had to find some happy mediums there. But you know, common faith, common mission in life, make all those things assets rather than a hindrance. Today I want to talk about two men who are on opposite ends of the spectrum and did not have common faith, did not have a common mission. Very different ideas on God, very different ways in dealing with Him. One of these men laid the foundation for paganism after the flood and false worship. The other one laid the foundation for worshiping God in truth and in spirit, laid the foundation for monotheism. In fact, is the father of all major monotheistic religions. One of them epitomized what it means to be a Babylonian, and the other one epitomizes what it means to be a believer. Are you a believer, or are you a Babylonian? Let's turn our Bibles to Genesis chapter 10. Genesis chapter 10, and as you're going there, we're going to be looking one more time at the second angel's message. You may remember the second angel is the briefest message we find among the three angels' messages. This is our commission. Our commission is to share this message with the world. And the second angel says, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. We're going to be taking a look today at the beginnings of Babylon. We're going to be taking a look at the foundation of Babylon. We already identified who this mystic Babylon is. This mystic Babylon is given its name because it derives its origins from that ancient city. Genesis chapter 10, and I'll be reading there verses 8 through 12. Genesis 10, verses 8 through 12 from the New King James. Genesis 10 is what's called the Table of Nations. It gives you the fathers, it gives you the originators of all the major tribes, all the major ethnicities, all the major families, all the countries we find in the world today. Cush begot who? Cush begot Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one on the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore, it is said, like Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was what? Babel, also known as Babylon. The beginning of his kingdom was Babylon, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. In the land of what? Keep that in mind. We're going to be coming back to that a few times. In the land of Shinar. From that land, he went to Assyria and built Nineveh, Rehoboth, Calah, and Rezin. Between Nineveh and Calah, that is a principal city. Nimrod is one of the most mysterious characters in the Bible. He's mentioned here. We're given details about him here. He's mentioned again in a genealogy in 1 Chronicles. Micah refers to him when it talks about Assyria as being the land of Nimrod, but he is one of the most mysterious characters we find in Scripture. His name, when you break down the Hebrew, actually is drawn from the word rebellion. Drawn from the word rebellion. He was adamantly opposed to God. Notice how the International Standard Version translates verse 9. He became a fearless hunter in what? In defiance of the Lord. He became a fearless hunter in defiance of the Lord. When it says this before the Lord, it literally means before the face of the Lord. Like in your face. You've heard that phrase nowadays, in your face. Nimrod was in the face of the Lord. It doesn't necessarily mean God's approval. God commissioned Noah and his sons. Genesis 9 verse 1 says, God blessed Noah and his sons, and he said to them, be fruitful and multiply and what? Fill the earth. In order to fill the earth, that means people need to scatter. People need to scatter. Go out and find new territory. Go out and find new land. Go out and subdue new plains and the like. But Nimrod said, no, I am not going to scatter. I am going to congregate people into my cities. I'm going to bring people together under my rule. God intended the world to be a theocracy where he is king. Nimrod said, no, I'm going to establish a monarchy, and I am going to be king. He started his conquests in southern Mesopotamia. So you see there what is called the land of Shinar. The what? Land of Shinar. He started Babylon or Babel, Uruk or Erech, it's called Nippur, which is the modern name today. He started his conquest in southern Mesopotamia, but that was not enough. He eventually migrated northward up the Tigris and took over portions that are now called, or then eventually called, portions of Assyria. The cities that he took over and built and established in southern Mesopotamia were not enough for him. Nimrod captures the spirit of Babylon. It is a spirit of defiance, a spirit of conquest, a spirit of hunger for power, a spirit of controlling and manipulating others. The spirit of Babylon inspires us to refuse to surrender to God's will. The spirit of Babylon inspires us to pride. The spirit of Babylon inspires us to spend our life getting and getting and getting. Are you a believer, or are you a Babylonian? Now, what is so unique about, or what is so interesting about Nimrod, is that we actually find references to him outside of the Bible. Definite references and possible references as well. Many believe that the oldest literature that we have, which comes from Babylon, the Epic of Gilgamesh, many believe that this Gilgamesh, who was depicted as a mighty hunter in this epic, is the same as Nimrod. It comes from Babylon. The story comes from Babylon. Gilgamesh interviews someone who survived the great flood. And when he heard about that, he sought to have immortality. Furthermore, Gilgamesh said, I am going to avenge myself of this God that brought the flood because he killed my forefathers. This is all found in the Epic of Gilgamesh, and many believe that this Gilgamesh character may well be Nimrod as well. The historian Josephus, who wrote during the first century, he shared the history of the Jews. In his book Antiquities, he mentions Nimrod. He said that Nimrod also gradually changed the government into what? Into tyranny, seeing no other way of turning men from the fear of God. Josephus was telling us that Nimrod wanted to turn people away from faith in God. And what did he want to do? Seeing no other way of turning men from the fear of God, but to bring them into a constant dependence on whose power? On his power. Nimrod said, I don't want you to be dependent on God. I want you to be dependent on me. On me. And notice what else Josephus tells us. He also said that he would be what? Revenged on God if he should have a mind to drown the world again. For that he would build a what? A tower too high for the waters to be able to reach, and that he would avenge himself on God for killing their forefathers. Josephus attaches Nimrod to the Tower of Babel. And this makes a whole lot of sense. Let's take a look at that. Genesis chapter 11, and we'll be reading there verses 1 and 2. Genesis chapter 11, verse 1 and 2. Now the whole earth had one language and one speech. And it came to pass, as they, that is the whole earth, the human race, as they journeyed from the east, or toward the east, they found a plain in the what? Land of Shinar. Does this sound familiar? Hey, this is the same land that who took over? That Nimrod took over. This is the same land that Nimrod established his kingdom in. So here you have a multitude of people coming to the land of Shinar. Following the connection here, Nimrod was the leader of these people. Nimrod was the one who inspired these people. Nimrod was the one who influenced these people. These people were followers of Nimrod. Nimrod was an extremely influential and convincing character. What did they do and why? Let's continue in verses 3 and 4. Let's continue in verses 3 and 4. Genesis chapter 11. Then they said to one another, Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and they had asphalt for mortar. And they said, Come, let us build ourselves what? A city, indicating the city was not yet built. Let us build ourselves a city and what? And a tower whose top is in the what? Heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered over the face of the whole earth. Here we find three objectives of these followers of Nimrod. Here we find three objectives. Number one, let's build a tower that will reach to the heavens. Why, someone might ask, would they want to do something like that? If you were living only a few generations after the flood, you would understand their purpose. You would understand their reason. But God made a promise to Noah and to his sons and to all of us. He said the water shall what? Never again become a flood to destroy all the earth. Will there ever be again a worldwide flood that will destroy all humanity, destroy all beasts? No. According to the promise of the Word of God, that is never going to take place. But these builders of the tower did not believe this promise. and said, for our security, for our safety, for our salvation, let us build a tower that is higher than the mountains. Let us build a tower. So the builders did not believe the promise of God. Furthermore, the builders depended on their own works to save themselves. And the builders did not look to God as one who would save them, but one they needed to save themselves from. Wow! What a twisted view of God. God says, I alone am your Savior. But the spirit of Babylon says, I need to be saved from you. I need to save myself from you. So 3 objectives. 1, build a tower that reaches unto heaven. Number 2, make a name for ourselves. We want to be popular. We want a legacy where everybody is going to look at us and say, these were incredible people. These were mighty people. These people reached glorious heights. We want the world's applause. We want to make a name for ourselves. And their third objective, according to verse 4, is that we are going to do this so that we will not be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth. Does this sound familiar? Nimrod built these cities so that people will not have to migrate out to the extremities of the earth. No, we want to congregate into one place. Their third objective was in total defiance of the commission that God gave to Noah. The builders of the tower give us more insights into the spirit of Babylon. It is a spirit of unbelief, a spirit of doubt in the promises of God. It is a spirit of self-dependence, and may I say, of self-salvation. It is a spirit of self-exaltation, one that is ruled by pride and arrogance, and it is a spirit that refuses the purpose of God. The spirit of Babylon inspires us to doubt God. The spirit of Babylon inspires us to carve out our own way to heaven and to boast about it. The spirit of Babylon inspires us to seek applause and to seek glory and recognition. And the spirit of Babylon inspires us to pursue our own plans and neglect the plans that God has given to us. Are you a believer or are you a Babylonian? But something very interesting happened. You're familiar with the story of the Tower of Babel. Let's jump down to verse 9. Chapter 11, verse 9. Therefore the name is called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth. And from there the Lord what? Scattered them abroad over the face of all the earth. Notice, one of their objectives in building that city, one of their objectives in building that tower is that we will not be scattered over the face of the earth. Yet God comes down and confounds their language, and what do they have to do? Scatter over the face of the earth. Oh, we can learn something so important here. Something really important here. You may resist God's will for your life. You may refuse to let him be your king, as the Babylonians and as Nimrod did. But his purpose for you is going to be fulfilled, one way or the other. I want to make a distinction between God's will and God's purpose. God's will is for you to be saved. Okay, but he's never going to force anybody to be saved. But God has a particular purpose for you. God has a purpose for every individual. God has a purpose for every family. God has a purpose for every nation. And that purpose is going to be fulfilled either in obedience or in disobedience. Sherry and I are Trekkies. And 1 year, it took us more than a year, didn't we? We watched the Next Generation, and one of the standout characters was an alien race called the Borg. And what the Borg did is they assimilated everybody. There was one mind that controlled the whole race. And they would capture you, and they would plug you with certain mechanics, certain instruments, certain computer, and you will be assimilated. You had no will of your own at that point. You had to do what they said. And if you tried to resist, the Borg will tell you resistance is futile. Resistance is futile. Well, when it comes to God's purpose for your life, guess what? Resistance is futile. Not that God takes away your freedom of choice, but God's purpose is going to be fulfilled whether you obey Him or whether you disobey Him. The standout example is Pharaoh. We find Pharaoh, upon whom the 10 plagues fell. Exodus chapter 9, verse 16, God speaking through Moses to Pharaoh says, "But indeed for this what? Purpose I have raised you up, that I may show my power in you, and that my name may be declared," where? In all the earth. Did Pharaoh fulfill this purpose? God's power was declared in this Pharaoh. We see that in the 10 plagues. We saw that in the opening of the Red Sea. Did this Pharaoh obey God? No, he did not. If he obeyed God, that purpose, the reason God placed him on the throne in Egypt, still would have been fulfilled. It would have been fulfilled through Pharaoh's obedience. But Pharaoh chose disobedience. But God's purpose was not nullified as a result of that. So too it was with the Babylonians. So too it was with the human race shortly after the flood. God told them, "Scatter abroad." And they, following Nimrod, said, "No, we will congregate in one place." God says, "No, my purpose is going to be fulfilled." And he confounded their languages. This says something really important to us. You know, it is so much better to live the life that God has laid out for us than to resist. It is so much more meaningful, so much more fulfilling, so much more gratifying. In the end, rebellion leads to misery. In the end, rebellion leads to frustration. In the end, rebellion leads to shame. Do you want the peace that God offers? Do you want the joy and the fulfillment that God offers? Are you a believer or are you a Babylonian? Let's take a look at our second character in the message today. We looked at Nimrod and how he epitomizes the spirit of Babylon, Nimrod and his followers. Now let's go to Genesis chapter 12. And here we'll find a stark contrast to Nimrod. Here we'll find a stark contrast to the spirit of Babylon. Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. Now the Lord had said to Abram, and I'm going to call him Abraham whenever I read this, as that's what his name was eventually changed to. Now the Lord had said to Abraham, "Get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house, to a land that I will show you. I will make you a what? A great nation. I will what? I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. All the families of the earth shall be blessed. Abraham first got this call when he was in his town of nativity, a city called Ur of the Chaldeans. Now, guess where this city is? It's in Iraq today, but back then it was called the land of Shinar. Does this sound familiar? Who took over the land of Shinar? Where was Babel built? Land of Shinar. Where was Erech and Nippur? In the land of Shinar. Oh, Abraham was born in Nimrod country. He was born in Nimrod country. This is interesting. Abraham was raised in a place where Nimrod's influence was greatly felt. The call to Abraham that we read about here in chapter 12 is a call to come out of Babylon. It is a call to come out of the land of Shinar. Now, the legacy of Nimrod had a great impact on Abraham's family. How do I know that? Joshua tells us. Joshua chapter 24, verse 2. Your fathers, including Terah, the father of who? Abraham, and the father of Nahor, dwelt on the other side of the Euphrates River in old times, and they did what? They served other gods. Oh my! Abraham was raised in a house where what was going on? Polytheism, paganism, idolatry. Abraham had a brother and had a father who served other gods in the land of Shinar, in the land of Nimrod. So Abraham then was called to step away from that. And Abraham initially migrated northward, not up the Tigris, but up the Euphrates to the city Haran. And there in the city of Haran, his father died. And again the call came to him while he was in Haran to get out of there. Now, let's break down Genesis 12, verses 1 through 3 for a moment here. Genesis 12, 1 through 3 begins with a command and is followed by a series of promises. And this says something very important. What was the command, first of all? What was the command? Get out. Get out. Hightail it on out of there. Blow that taco joint. Don't be sticking around there anymore. Separate yourself from Babylonian influences. Separate yourself from the confusion that you have been surrounded by. And this is very important, the command first and then the promises, because his promise cannot be claimed if the command is not obeyed. If Abraham did not get out, God would not have been able to fulfill these promises to him. I remember one morning, my daughter Tricia is laying in bed. She wants to spend the whole morning in bed, and I'm baking biscuits for all the children. My boys are downstairs, but Tricia, she's staying in bed. And I told her, I got biscuits ready. Oh, this is going to be a great breakfast. Dad has done some good cooking. Come on down. But what did Tricia do? Stayed in bed. I promised her a great breakfast, but there was only one way I was going to fulfill it, because I was not going to give her breakfast in bed. There's only one way I was going to fulfill it, and furthermore, if there were biscuits left over after I had my serving, they were going to be gone. They were going to be gone. The only way that Tricia was going to receive the promise of an awesome dad-cooked breakfast was to get out. Get out of bed. I went a little further. I brought a biscuit up with me, and I put it under her nose. I enticed her. I got her out. But how many blessings are we losing out on because we have not obeyed the call? Because we have chosen not to get out. What are these blessings? Abraham, get out. And what is God going to do? First of all, he says, I will make you a what in verse 2? Great nation, great in the eyes of the Lord. Not necessarily great in the eyes of the world, not a great military power, not a great economic power, not a great nation that is conquering and taking over others. No. But this is going to be a nation that's great in the eyes of the Lord, a nation that is demonstrating to the world the love of Christ. God told Abraham that I'm going to make your name great as well. I'm going to give you a great name. Again, great not as the world sees it, not as the world applauds, not as the world lauds, no, but one that is associated with integrity, one that is associated with honesty, one that is associated with godliness. Abraham, I will make your name great. I will build in you a character like Christ's. Another blessing he gave to Abraham is, I will bless you. I will bless you. More than material blessings are being mentioned here, but spiritual blessings as well. Blessings of a fulfilling life. Blessings of a life that is meaningful and impactful in a positive way on others. And that comes to that last blessing. He said, I'm going to bless you, but I'm also going to make you a what? I'm going to make you a blessing. I'm going to make you a blessing. Bringing hope to others, bringing light to others, imparting wisdom to others, strengthening those who are weak, bringing in those who are outcast. Do you want to be a recipient of these promises? Do you want these blessings in your life? Do you want God to make your name great in that when people think of you, they think of Jesus Christ? Do you want to be a person who is blessed and who is blessing others as well? The same condition applies to us. Get out. Get out. We are called to separate ourselves from the world. And we are called to live our life in which we are traveling to the land that God has promised us. A land that is yet to come. How did Abraham respond to this? Genesis chapter 12 and verse 4. So Abraham what? Departed. Abraham departed as the Lord had spoken to him. And Lot went with him. And Abraham was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. He went from Ur, he went to Haran where his father died, and he departed from there. Now I want to make something very clear, that this was not an easy choice on Abraham's part. He already had riches, he already had flocks, he already had herds, he already had just about everything a man could ask for. In 2010, shortly after I married Sherry, I got a call from the Illinois Conference to come and pastor a district there. And there was a choice before me. I had been 26 years at Sikorsky in their IT department, and I had a pretty steady job, pretty steady career. Things were going fine with me. My children, basically at that time, were in and out of the house, partially under my roof, partially at school. I had to make a choice at that time. Am I going to follow what I was convinced was the call of God, or was I going to stay where everything is pretty secure? I was going to take a considerable cut in pay, and I'm going to be away from those that I love. The church family I loved, the physical, biological family that I loved as well. I know that for Abraham, this was not an easy choice. I know for Abraham, making that separation was very difficult. But Abraham did what he did because he believed in the promises of God. Hebrews 11, verse 8, by what? By faith Abraham what? Obeyed when he was called to go out to the place which he would receive as an inheritance, and he went out not knowing where he was going. What awaits me, Father, in this new territory? What can I expect? God did not tell him that. But Abraham went out because he believed in the promises of God. Abraham went out because God told him to. Abraham was a faithful witness to God and led souls to Christ. Let's read down in verse 5. Genesis chapter 12 and verse 5. Then Abraham took Sarah his wife and Lot his brother's son and all their possessions that they had gathered, and the what? People, King James says souls, the people whom they had acquired in Haran. And they departed to go to the land of Canaan, so they came to the land of Canaan. There were people, souls, that they acquired in Haran. When you first read this, you may think that this perhaps was slave trade going on. But that is not the case. Notice what we read in the book Patriarchs and Prophets. During their stay in Haran, both Abraham and Sarah had done what? Led others to the worship and service of the true God. These did what? Attached themselves to the patriarch's household and accompanied him to the land of promise. While they were in Haran, Abraham and Sarah bore witness for Christ and shared the gospel with many of the people there. And many said, I want to serve the God that this man is serving, and I'm going to follow him. When Abraham came to Canaan, he continued to witness for Jesus. Verse 7, Genesis 12, verse 7, then the Lord appeared to Abraham and said, to your descendants I will give this land. And there he what? There he built an altar to the Lord who had appeared to him. If you followed the places where Abraham journeyed in the land, you would see an altar here, you would see an altar there, you would see an altar here. You ever go under a bridge and see some graffiti that says Jerry was here or something like that, okay? Well, if you were in Canaan, you would see signs that would say Abraham was here. What would that sign be? An altar to the true God, an altar to Yahweh, an altar to Jehovah. And you would know that Abraham at one point was here. Abraham was not afraid to witness for Christ. Going back to my IT years, I would load up my desk with different tracts, different Christian tracts and pamphlets. Because when people came to my office, I wanted them to take notice of them. I wanted them to see it. And my hope was that they would show interest and either take one or ask me questions about one. But there are times someone would ask me a question about it. They would take the tract. And then when I go over to their desk to work on an issue, I would notice that the tract was turned upside down. and maybe pushed a little bit under the keyboard as well. I don't want to judge them or anything, but it's evident that they did not want people to believe or associate them with what that, at this point yet, what that tract was teaching. What about you? Are your tracks upside right, or are your tracks upside down? Are you a believer, or are you a Babylonian? There are some stark contrasts between Nimrod and Abraham. Nimrod was a hunter that was cruel to animals. Abraham was a herder who was easy on animals. Nimrod rebelled against God. Abraham, by faith, obeyed God. Nimrod sought to be in control of his life. Abraham surrendered control to the Lord. Nimrod built cities to his own honor. Abraham built altars to the worship of the Lord. Nimrod obtained land by violence and by conquering. Abraham waited on the Lord and trusted that God would give him his land in due time. Nimrod sought to establish his own name. Abraham sought or trusted that God in his due time would make his name great. Nimrod sought to extend his own kingdom. Abraham sought to extend the kingdom of God. Nimrod intimidated and manipulated people. Abraham blessed people. Nimrod set his eyes on the riches of this life in this world. Abraham set his eyes on the riches of heaven. Nimrod lived in doubt of the promises of God. Abraham based his life on these promises. Nimrod sought to save himself from God. Abraham made God his Savior and trusted him entirely for his salvation. As we're told in Genesis 15, verse 6, Abraham did what? Believed in the Lord, and the Lord counted it to him for righteousness. Nimrod and Abraham represent two classes of people. And as we come closer and closer to the second coming of Christ, as we come closer and closer to the last day, we are going to gravitate more and more toward one of these two examples. There will be a class that rebels against the government of God, that seeks to control others and force them to join them in this rebellion. But there will also be a class that trusts in the promises of God and will choose to follow him though all the world is going astray. Let us follow the example of Abraham. As questions are asked in the book Patriarchs and Prophets, who is ready at the call of providence to renounce cherished plans and familiar associations? Who will accept new duties and enter untried fields, doing God's work with firm and willing heart, for Christ's sake, counting his losses gain? He who will do this has the what? Has the faith of Abraham. This is a picture of Babylon, taken in 1932. Glorious beginning, glorious start, a far-reaching empire, built with so many haughty and arrogant aspirations. But today, it is a heap of rubbish. Today, it is fallen apart. Babylon speaks to us today that the works of men crumble and fall. Like Babylon, like the tower, they will stand for a period of time, but they eventually will fail. But the promises of God are sure. The promises of God will never fail. The promises of God will always be reliable. And the promises of God will be fulfilled in their time. Let us follow the example of Abraham. Let us base our lives on the promises of God. Let us not follow the ways of the world. As we get closer to the last days, and as Babylon begins extending her influence throughout the entire world, let us take a stand now that we may be ready when it seeks to encroach upon us, that we will choose to be faithful to God, even though the heavens may fall. This is my prayer, and this is my hope for each of us.